Have you ever driven past a massive, modern skyscraper, a building of steel and glass, towering 25 stories into the sky, and marveled at the sheer engineering required to keep it standing? Now, flip that image entirely upside down. Imagine that same 25-story building, not reaching up into the air, but plunging straight down into the solid bedrock of the earth. Imagine a city buried in complete darkness, completely self-sustaining, and built entirely by hand. We are taught that human history is a straight line of continuous upward progress. We assume our ancient ancestors lived in simple mud huts while we build modern metropolises. But the physical evidence buried under our feet violently breaks that timeline. The forgotten cities we are about to explore do not just challenge our understanding of history, they aggressively defy the limits of ancient engineering. Hidden far beneath the arid, sun-baked surface of the Cappadocia region in Turkey lies a physical anomaly that completely redefines the absolute limits of subterranean engineering. In the year 1963, a local man was simply remodeling his home. He knocked down a heavy stone wall in his basement and discovered a dark, silent tunnel. That narrow tunnel led directly into the abyss of Derinkuyu. Derinkuyu is a massive, ancient underground city carved directly into the soft volcanic tuff rock. According to the official measurements of the Turkish Ministry of Culture, the city descends a staggering 85 meters into the earth, spanning 18 distinct, meticulously excavated levels. To put this incredible depth into perspective, 85 meters is the exact equivalent of a 25-story modern skyscraper, built straight down into the dark bedrock. The mainstream archaeological consensus posits that the city was initially carved by the Phrygian people around the 8th century before Christ and vastly expanded centuries later during the Byzantine era. It was allegedly designed strictly as a temporary, subterranean fortress to protect the local, terrified population from devastating, sweeping foreign invasions. The underground city contains sprawling stables for livestock, massive stone wine presses, ornate religious chapels, and enough individual living quarters to sustain up to 20,000 people simultaneously. But the physical reality of the site presents a staggering, almost impossible geotechnical challenge. Carving 18 deep levels into soft volcanic rock without the entire massive structure collapsing inward requires a flawless, mathematical understanding of load-bearing stone pillars and complex structural stress. Furthermore, a city of 20,000 people, living 25 stories underground, requires immense, continuous oxygen. Derinkuyu features an incredibly sophisticated, perfectly engineered network of over 50 individual ventilation shafts, some plunging 55 meters deep, perfectly distributing breathable air to every single dark corner of the abyss. The terrifying, counterintuitive reversal here is that digging downward is infinitely more dangerous than building upward. There is absolute zero margin for error. A single miscalculated, overly wide corridor or one poorly supported rock ceiling on level 14 would instantly trigger a massive cascading collapse, burying 20,000 people alive in seconds. To this day, absolutely no modern mining company has attempted to manually carve an 18-level, self-sustaining city out of volcanic ash using exclusively iron chisels and hand tools. If this sprawling subterranean metropolis was built merely as a temporary panic room to wait out a passing army, why did its ancient architects invest the staggering time and flawless mathematical precision required to ensure perfect ventilation and absolute structural integrity for 20,000 citizens buried deep in the dark? Deep in the southeastern rolling hills of modern-day Zimbabwe sits a sprawling, silent complex of stone ruins that completely shattered the racist expectations of early European explorers. The absolute focal point of this mysterious site is the massive Great Enclosure. According to the official records of UNESCO, the massive exterior walls of the Great Enclosure reach up to 11 meters in height and extend for a staggering 250 meters in circumference. The physical anomaly here is not merely the immense size, but the highly specific, incredibly difficult construction technique. The towering walls are built entirely using dry stone masonry. Millions of rectangular, heavy granite blocks were stacked with meticulous, obsessive precision, relying entirely on gravity and careful geometric fitting to hold them together. There is absolutely no mortar, no cement, and no binding agent of any kind used anywhere in the massive structure. The mainstream historical record attributes the sprawling city to the ancestral Shona people, constructed between the 11th and 15th centuries Anno Domini, serving as the rich capital of the powerful kingdom of Zimbabwe. But early European colonizers, arriving in the dark 19th century, were completely blinded by profound, institutionalized racial prejudice. When they encountered a massive, perfectly constructed granite city deep in southern Africa, they vehemently refused to believe the local indigenous population could have possibly built it. They fabricated wild, baseless claims that it was built by ancient Phoenicians from the Mediterranean, or that it was the legendary biblical city of Ophir, built by King Solomon. These colonial racist theories have been definitively, entirely debunked by modern archaeology. However, stripping away the ugly racist myths leaves us with a genuinely terrifying architectural reality. To build a curving, freestanding granite wall, 11 meters high, without using a single drop of mortar, requires an absolute, mathematical mastery of physics. The ancient walls taper precisely as they rise, perfectly distributing the immense, crushing weight downward to completely prevent outward collapse. The heavy foundation trenches were leveled perfectly. The counterintuitive reversal is the sheer, undeniable permanence of this ancient dry stone technique. While modern steel-reinforced concrete routinely degrades and crumbles after a mere century, the unmortared granite walls of Great Zimbabwe have endured the harsh, punishing African climate, violent tectonic shifts, and centuries of complete abandonment without ever falling. Carved directly into the sheer, blazing rose-red sandstone cliffs of the desert in southern Jordan is the ancient, legendary Nabatean capital city of Petra. The absolute most famous and breathtaking structure within the city is Al-Khazne, widely known as the Treasury. The Petra Archaeological Park confirms that this monumental, awe-inspiring stone facade measures 40 meters in height and 28 meters in width. But Petra was not built. It was violently excavated. The mainstream archaeological explanation states that in the 1st century, Anno Domini, the brilliant Nabateans carved the treasury entirely top-down. They chiseled a narrow, highly dangerous ledge near the very top of the sheer cliff, stood on it, and literally chipped the solid mountain away beneath their feet, slowly lowering the floor level until the magnificent 40-meter facade emerged from the rock. The physical reality of a top-down, monolithic excavation presents an absolute, unforgiving architectural nightmare. When building a massive cathedral from the ground up, a mistake can easily be replaced. A flawed block can simply be swapped out for a new one. When carving a 40-meter, intricately detailed temple downward out of a single sheer cliff face, there is absolute zero margin for error. A single, misplaced, overly hard chisel strike on a delicate column, a miscalculated depth on a massive relief sculpture, or even hitting a microscopic fault line hidden deep in the sandstone would cause catastrophic, completely irreparable damage. You simply cannot glue solid rock back onto the side of a mountain. The staggering, counterintuitive reversal is the sheer 3D spatial awareness required. The Nabatean architects had to perfectly pre-calculate the exact geometry of every single column, capital, and statue before the very first hammer strike hit the top of the cliff. They executed a flawless, entirely irreversible subtraction of thousands of tons of solid rock. While we completely understand that they used only simple hand tools, no modern architectural firm has ever attempted to replicate a top-down, monolithic excavation of a 40-meter sandstone facade without the heavy use of 3D computer modeling and precise laser surveying equipment. If this incredibly dangerous subtractive engineering method was truly executed entirely by human hands, using only simple weighted plumb bobs and iron chisels, how did they maintain absolutely perfect symmetry and flawless proportion on a massive 40-meter scale while standing precariously on a cliff edge? Rising abruptly and massively from the completely flat floodplains of Illinois in the United States is an enormous terraced earthen structure known today as Monk's Mound. It is the towering central monument of the ancient forgotten city of Cahokia. The Illinois Historic Preservation Division officially confirms that the massive base of this dirt mound covers an incredible 14 acres, meaning its footprint is physically larger than that of the Great Pyramid of Giza. It stands a towering 30 meters high and contains approximately 22 million cubic feet of packed earth. The mainstream archaeological explanation states that Monk's Mound was built entirely by the pre-Columbian Mississippian culture between the years 1050 and 1350 Anno Domini. Because these indigenous people possessed absolutely no draft animals, no wagons, and no wheels, orthodox archaeology concludes the entire massive structure was built exclusively by human hands, carrying 22 million cubic feet of heavy soil in woven baskets. But the physical reality of the massive mound presents a profound, terrifying geotechnical anomaly. Soil is not solid stone. If you pile 22 million cubic feet of loose, wet, Midwestern clay and topsoil into a 30-meter high pyramid, it will not simply stand there. Without massive internal reinforcement, a dirt mound of that immense, crushing weight will experience catastrophic, rapid slumping. It will literally spread outward under its own incredible gravitational pressure, and heavy, seasonal monsoon rains will rapidly erode its steep, carefully crafted slopes into a featureless, ordinary hill in a matter of years. The breathtaking, counterintuitive reversal lies buried deep inside the structure itself. Modern core drilling has recently revealed that Monk's Mound is not just a giant pile of random dirt. It is a highly engineered, deliberately layered composite. The brilliant Mississippian builders intentionally alternated thick layers of highly swelling clays with distinct layers of sand and crushed limestone to create complex internal capillary barriers, managing internal water drainage perfectly. They also constructed massive internal retaining walls made of alternating, tightly packed blocks of sod to counteract the massive outward gravitational shear of the 30-meter peak. Absolutely no modern civil engineer would attempt to build a 14-acre, 30-meter-tall earthen dam without the heavy use of modern compaction machinery and massive concrete reinforcements. If this indigenous civilization supposedly completely lacked basic draft animals and the wheel, how did they possess the advanced, highly complex geotechnical engineering knowledge required to successfully manipulate soil mechanics and internal water pressure on a massive scale that rivals modern concrete dams? Resting completely quietly, 40 meters beneath the dark surface of Qiandao Lake in China is a sprawling, perfectly preserved ancient metropolis. Known historically as Shicheng or Lion City, Chinese provincial records definitively confirm the massive city was built during the powerful Eastern Han Dynasty, dating back nearly 2,000 years. The submerged city covers a massive area equivalent to 62 modern football fields, featuring 265 ornate stone archways, fully paved stone streets, and complex, multi-story wooden and stone structures. The mechanism of its sudden disappearance is not a historical mystery. In the year 1959, the Chinese government intentionally and completely flooded the vast valley to create the massive Shinan River Dam hydroelectric project. Nearly 300,000 people were forcefully relocated, and the ancient beautiful city was swallowed whole by the rapidly rising water. The physical anomaly, however, is its breathtaking, seemingly impossible state of preservation. Water is an extremely highly destructive force. Fast-moving currents rapidly erode solid stone. Marine biology, aggressive bacteria, and wood-boring organisms typically devour submerged organic material within decades. The mainstream assumption was that Shicheng would quickly, inevitably rot into a featureless, completely unrecognizable pile of mud and rubble at the dark bottom of the lake. The stunning, counterintuitive reversal is that the deep water did not destroy the city, it sealed it in an immaculate, airless vault. Because Qiandao Lake is composed entirely of fresh, non-corrosive water, and the city sits at an extreme depth of 40 meters where destructive sunlight simply cannot penetrate, harmful marine biology cannot thrive. The total lack of oxygen and UV light has completely suspended the natural decay process. Deep-water archaeological dives routinely reveal an eerie, perfectly frozen landscape. Intricately carved wooden beams from the ancient Ming and Qing dynasties remain completely, perfectly unrotted. The highly ornate stonework on the massive archways, detailing fierce lions and dragons, retains edges as sharp and clean as the exact day they were chiseled centuries ago. The entire city looks exactly as it did in 1959, simply suspended in a dark blue, watery void. It has rightfully become known as the true Atlantis of the East. If 40 meters of fresh water can perfectly freeze a massive 2,000-year-old city in time, flawlessly protecting fragile wood and stone from all decay, how many other ancient, completely unrecorded civilizations are currently sitting perfectly preserved at the dark bottom of deep, unexplored freshwater lakes around the world? Located in the hot, arid Sindh province of modern-day Pakistan are the sprawling, massive, sun-baked brick ruins of Mohenjo-Daro. The Department of Archaeology and Museums firmly confirms this was one of the absolute largest settlements of the ancient Indus Valley civilization, built around 2500 before Christ. The internet is absolutely flooded with wild, fabricated claims regarding this specific city. Sensationalist websites and television shows routinely assert that Mohenjo-Daro contains highly radioactive ash and bizarre vitrified glass sand, supposedly proving it was completely destroyed by an ancient nuclear explosion. These wild claims are entirely, 100% debunked pseudoscience. No accredited archaeological or geological institution anywhere in the world has ever detected anomalous radiation or nuclear vitrification at the site. But stripping away the fake, sensational nuclear theories reveals a verified physical anomaly that is, in terms of sheer civic engineering, far more impressive. It is the bricks. Mohenjo-Daro was built using millions upon millions of fired mud bricks. The true physical anomaly is their absolutely stunning mathematical uniformity. Extensive excavations reveal that nearly every single brick used in the massive city conforms strictly to an exact, uncompromising ratio of 4:2:1. This strict, highly standardized mathematical ratio was rigorously and flawlessly enforced across the entire, massive urban grid. The stunning, counterintuitive reversal lies buried beneath the perfectly aligned geometric streets. The brilliant Indus Valley architects engineered a massive, city-wide civic plumbing and sanitation system that was completely unparalleled in the ancient world. Every single home had direct access to a clean well. More astoundingly, almost every single house contained a dedicated bathing room with a baked brick floor sloping precisely into a highly complex, completely covered street drainage system. Human waste was efficiently routed away from living areas through a meticulously engineered network of subterranean sewers, equipped with actual manholes for maintenance and cleaning. Europe did not achieve this staggering level of comprehensive city-wide public sanitation until the filthy 19th century, nearly 4,000 years later. If a civilization in 2500 before Christ possessed the complex civic authority and absolute logistical mastery required to mass-produce mathematically standardized bricks and engineer covered subterranean sewer systems for tens of thousands of citizens, why did human public health engineering regress so severely for the next 4 millennia? Off the isolated eastern shore of the island of Pohnpei in Micronesia sits an ancient archaeological site that physically defies all oceanic logic. UNESCO documents the ruined, sprawling city of Nan Madal as consisting of nearly 100 massive artificial islets built entirely on top of a submerged coral reef. The raw building material used for this Venice of the Pacific is completely staggering. The massive structures, which include retaining walls up to 15 meters high, are constructed from an estimated 750,000 metric tons of massive black basalt logs. Some of these naturally columnar basalt megaliths weigh up to an incredible 50 tons each. The official historical account confidently states that the Saudeleur dynasty constructed the massive city between the 12th and 17th centuries Anno Domini. Geochemical tracing definitively proves the extremely heavy basalt was quarried from the exact opposite side of Pohnpei Island. Because they possessed absolutely no pulleys, no cranes, and no metal tools, orthodox archaeology assumes the massive 50-ton stones were physically dragged by humans to the coast and somehow floated across miles of open ocean using simple rafts made of lashed palm tree trunks. The physical reality of this logistical claim borders on the completely impossible. The terrifying, counterintuitive reversal is the sheer, unforgiving density of black basalt. A 50-ton column of solid black volcanic rock absolutely does not float. If a fragile palm log raft carrying a massive megalith encounters a sudden, unpredictable Pacific swell or shifts slightly off balance, the massive rock will instantly plunge to the absolute bottom of the ocean. The loss of a single 50-ton stone would represent months of entirely wasted quarrying labor. Furthermore, once the heavy stones miraculously arrived at the submerged reef, they had to be manually lifted out of the water and perfectly stacked in a precise crisscross pattern, completely unmortared, up to 15 meters high, while the indigenous builders stood working in waist-deep, moving tidal water. While neat theoretical models of palm rafts and leverage exist on academic paper, no modern engineering team has ever successfully replicated floating 50-ton basalt logs across miles of open ocean on lashed timber and safely stacking them on a submerged reef without the heavy use of massive hydraulic cranes. If shifting 500,000 tons of rapidly sinking volcanic rock across miles of unpredictable open water requires absolute logistical perfection, how many massive stones were lost to the dark sea floor during the centuries it took to build this impossible floating city? We now know that the physical record of human history contains incredible urban and logistical achievements that aggressively challenge our comfortable models of ancient capability. We do not have verified mechanical models that can physically reproduce the dry stone towering walls of Great Zimbabwe without mortar, the top-down monolithic carving of Petra, the impossible open ocean transit of massive basalt logs to Nan Madal, or the faultless, highly advanced soil engineering of Mound. These sites connect to a larger, fascinating, cross-disciplinary pattern. Ancient civilizations repeatedly solved massive logistical, structural, and environmental problems using incredibly advanced methodologies that leave absolutely no trace of trial and error. They simply executed flawlessly at an enormous scale, built their massive metropolises, and eventually vanished, leaving the heavy stones to outlast their memory. What this tells us is not the cheap answer that these cities were built by extraterrestrials or magic. It tells us that the distance between the assumed primitive nature of our ancient ancestors and the terrifying physical reality of what they actually built is measurable, and the gap is completely real. The gap is in the bedrock, the soil, and the stone, and it is not going away. Understanding what ancient civilizations actually built requires us to look strictly at the raw physical data, ruthlessly stripping away both our modern assumptions of superiority and our fabricated, sensational myths. Look at the evidence. Which of these 7 lost cities do you think presents the most profound, undeniable challenge to our understanding of ancient logistical planning and engineering?